I've been working the super yacht life for a solid 2 years, saving up for an around-the-world motorbike trip, when I got to the stage where I had one more boss trip left, and I'd be heading home, fresh with excitement and new goals. The boss trip was set to be a 4-week trip through the Panama Canal, through the Caribbean, and then end up in Florida. Corona sparked up at the beginning of the trip, and our humble 4 weeks of work was re-evaluated to be a 6-month liveaboard fiasco. This was a thorn in the balls. The good news was that each of us, once a week, would get a day off to do whatever we liked, and that my day would be tomorrow. This amounted to 3 days off in the tropical islands. Holy shit balls, I was keen to not have to see the goddamn owners of the boat and just escape to nature for a while. We were in the San Blas Islands, which had amazing coral, crystal clear waters, and a shit ton of fish. I made it my mission to try and see as much as possible and to video everything that I saw for my 3 days off. Grabbed kayak and girlfriend at the time and headed out to some sweet fishy spots. Mission accomplished. I'm in the water, no dickheads around me, and hours to take in the surroundings. Saw some chicken parmigiana coral, tissue box fish, a yellow fish, and some fish. After that, I went and checked out a massive pipe in the water. Swimming down it was kind of freaky because there were crocodiles somewhere in the area. So I didn't go too deep and try to pretend to be super intimidating. Next spot was the mangroves. We couldn't go there with the guests because we saw a crocodile hanging out there once and they completely freaked out. We tried the whole "they're more afraid of you than you are of it" argument, but it didn't work at all. This was a shame because the mangroves filter out the water in the area, making it super clear and pretty, so it was worth the risk. In the afternoon, the engineer and I headed to some caves we've been to a couple times before. Unfortunately, we were relying on my directions to get to said caves and ended up overshooting it by about a kilometre. We jumped in anyways and bumped into the spiky leopard chicken nugget fish, which is always a rare sighting. Fast forward and we finally made it to the well-hidden caves. I swam through narrow channels, saw some cool fish, saw a shark, tried to get to my artistic shots, and had a beer. On our days off, we were allowed 2 beers, a welcome change to the previous 0 beer policy. In my wisdom, I packed a bunch of ice with the beers to keep them cold. Not part of my calculations was that the ice was in the same compartment as the engineer's phone. This was a bad $800 mistake, and one I have learnt from. I am sorry, Mikkel. Another week goes by of not getting fired or losing my mind. I'm on to my 2nd day off. Same drill, different location. This time I head to a spot with more life and a really cool coral wall. Following some advice from the captain, I brought a weight belt with me. Assuming it wasn't an attempt at trying to kill me, this would make freediving a whole lot easier. First animal appearance, spotted underwater towelbird. Second encounter, horse-faced fish, the only fish to have evolved from its horse relative. It longs for the days where it used to live the simple life chasing fake rabbits around an endless grass loop. A man-eating shark, the predator of the sea. This ancient terror stalks reef areas hunting for innocent humans to eat. They love how soft and processed we are, and I had to keep my distance from the guy and try and be brave about it. In the afternoon, I saw a group of human beings hanging out on an island. I began to paddle over to them when I got radioed by the captain telling me that the owners didn't want me to go near them. I was very butthurt and very, very close to them. I made an awkward turn all of a sudden and headed for a neighbouring island 100 metres from the people. I sat down on the sand and drank my 2 beers in a pretty salty mood. I ended up checking out the mangroves that were in the area and I hadn't been to them yet, which actually turned out to be pretty cool. There was a shit ton of fish there, lots of yellow guys trying to find their way, and then hundreds of tiny little fish that look like a nursery of some sort. Very cool. I got up a little earlier than before and packed everything I needed for the day. First thing I did was fly my drone from the kayak, which was oddly scary because I had lost one to the ocean before and the pain was still fresh. The next mission was to explore the first island, this one here. The captain was a little anal about us going anywhere with people or dogs after an incident a week back. Courtney went to an island on her day off and came back to the boat after being attacked by dogs. Fuck, rabies, was my first thought. The captain was pissed beyond pissed. We all learnt a lot about rabies that afternoon. Turns out a dog with rabies, or a rabid dog, usually dies from the infection within 10 days. Likely to be foaming from the mouth as well. It acts a little crazy, and we'd been in the islands for around 60 days, so the dog had to be there the whole time, and it didn't have rabies. Story checked out, no rabies. If she did get rabies though, it would almost be certain that she would have died. Heavy times. Heavy times. After the island, I paddled for 2 hours in search of another island, but this one we'd never actually been to before. It was always a little bit too far away from the rest of where the guests wanted to go. It ended up being that the best spot was where I had originally been, and I had wasted 4 hours paddling for no reason. I did see a really cool, weird spotted rhino looking fish, which I'd never seen before, so I guess that counts for something. I made my way back and found a really nice spot near the entrance of a channel. Unfortunately, I hadn't been back to the boat the whole day, and I had to drop off the kids at the swimming pool. I had heard of the aquaturd from many people before, but had never actually tried it. I held onto the kayak to support myself. I looked for any crocodiles and got into the zone. I shot off a few rounds and looked back in horror as thousands of little brown bits exploded into the crystal clear waters. Another factor I hadn't considered was that I had a hemorrhoid that I usually have to push back into my asshole. In my crouched position, holding onto the kayak, unable to tread water, I could not for the love of God get the hemorrhoid back in his home. There seemed to be no goddamn current, and the explosion of meaty diarrhea began to surround me. I put my snorkel in and tried to float away from the assault. 2 very long minutes of this, and I'd popped him back in, and the tsunami of shit had diluted. You're welcome for these details. I'm sure that everyone wanted to hear them. After the trauma of experiencing my first aquaturd, I headed for a tiny little island that looked really cool and did some more droning. This led me to realize that I really need to up my tan game. As I paddled back to the boat, I found one last spot, which turned out to be probably the highlight of the 3 days. There's just so much around there. That sums up my 3 days of adventuring in the San Blas Islands. It made me realise how much I love exploring new places at my own pace, and the thrill of seeing something for the first time. I decided then that I would buy a professional underwater camera and see where the curiosity takes me.